Coles Bay, Freycinet National Park, East Coast Tasmania, the place that we began our trip to Wineglass Bay.
It assimilated into the mountains that were above it at that time. And then around 200 million years ago, the glacial age came through, cleaned away all the softer rock on top, and left this exposed granite core that we have here today. Now, it was originally discovered by the Western world by Abel Tasman's voyage, the Dutch explorer, back in 1642. Now, they sailed their tall ships, the Heemskerk and the Zeehan, down the west coast of Tasmania, around the south coast, and up the east coast here. As they came up the east coast, they saw Maria Island, about 30 miles south from here, and named that. Schouten Island at the end of the peninsula here, and named that. And as they came up the outside of the peninsula, they were getting blown out to sea towards New Zealand by the prevailing northwesterly winds. And that made the peninsula look like an island to them. So they named it Vondelens Island. Now, it wasn't until 1802 when the French explorer, Captain Nicolas Baudin, sailed down here in his tall ships, the Naturalist and the Geograph. They anchored those tall ships off the northern end of Maria Island and then sailed and rowed their longboats up around this area and further south, and soon discovered it was actually a peninsula, not an island, and renamed it Freycinet after the two hydrographers on board, Henry and Louis Freycinet. Now, if you look at charts of the east coast of Tasmania in particular, you can tell all the big bold bays and obvious headlands have Dutch names, while all the small intricate bays, waterways and islands have French names, pretty much for exactly the same reasons. The French spent a lot more time exploring more thoroughly in smaller vessels and also doing a lot more accurate chart work while they were here. You can probably notice there's a bay just out off the left-hand bow at the moment with some houses in it. That one's called Parsons Cove. But if you asked any of the locals how to get to Parsons Cove, they wouldn't have a clue. It's locally known as the Fisheries. And it did get its name, the Fisheries, back in 1824. So I suppose the locals are allowed to forget it was called Parsons Cove. But it got its name, the Fisheries, from a man by the name of George Meredith, who was one of the first free settlers in the Swansea region, which is about 10 miles west across Great Oyster Bay here. They sailed over here and set up Tasmania's first shore-based whaling fishery, and the name was shortened down to just the Fisheries over the years. Now, it was there until 1870 when it finally closed, making it the longest standing bay whaling station in Tasmania. And then as early as 1880, the Australian Field Naturalist Party used to sail over here from Swansea and use that area as their annual holiday camp. They started documenting all the flora and fauna in the region and were very instrumental in first getting it changed into a reserve in 1915 and then further into a national park in 1916, along with Mount Field National Park down near Hobart, making those the first two national parks in Tasmania and some of the first in Australia also. They did subdivide that little area called the Fisheries before the park was formed, and when they declared the park in 1916, they got to keep their own freehold title inside the national park. So possibly some of the luckiest people in Australia, maybe even the world, they can buy and sell inside a national park with no more developments, no more subdivisions. That's it, as you see it there now. Very lucky people indeed. Now, it is also directly below the walking tracks car park for Freycinet folks, and just out off the left-hand side now, going up between the lowest point between the Hazards Mountains there, you can probably see that yellow gravel track. That's about the Wineglass Bay walking track, and it's an hour and a half return walk up to the lookout and back, or about a three and a half hour return walk down to the beach and back. Just see the interpretation centre in the national park if you're thinking of doing any of the walks in the area, and they give you maps, track conditions and abilities, that sort of thing.
Fish.
So hence the name Hilda Refuge, what we now just call Refuge Island. But since then, in around 1850, there is a story of an African-American sealer and whaler by the name of Captain Albert Hazard. Now, Captain Hazard also took refuge behind Refuge Island in his whaleboat from a storm. But he broke his anchor chain and drifted out towards these rocks here up ahead and to the left slightly, and landed up on top of them in a boat called the Promise. And now notice jumped in, swam ashore, climbed over Mount Mason, the last of the hazards now behind the vessel, and went down and collected silent coal. We lived in what's now called Cold Bay. They came back in a longboat and rescued the crew, and when the storm had died down, they came back, fixed the boat where it was on the rock. And on a full moon high tide, they dragged it back in to winter lake here with the wiring in it. Now, certainly a lot of problem in those days. I think nowadays, you have the E-term turned on, and helicopters in the air, the rescue crews in the water, and the boat would still get destroyed when they drag it back in. I'm pretty amazing, and they can look after their own lives and their lives all at the same time. Really important to hold on, folks, otherwise someone will end up falling over.
Wineglass Bay wasn't always such a beautiful place. It has quite a very dark history, and to understand why it's called Wineglass Bay is not necessarily because of the shape of it. In the 1820s, the bay was a favoured spot for whalers, and they would chase down the whales and they would herd them into the bay. And apparently, what would happen is that they killed so many that the bay itself actually filled up with the blood of the whales, staining it with a rich red colour, and that's where it got its name as Wineglass Bay. Weathering and erosion of the granite mountain areas continues all around Freycinet National Park today, and you can see the discoloration on the rock surfaces where the water emerges from joints in the large rock surfaces. Apparently this is due to depositions of iron oxide and other minerals, and originally they dissolved as water and moved slowly between the granite blocks. There's pink, which is all the way through the granite, and it creates a pink or a cream colour. And there's also a black mineral as well as quartz. These are everywhere on the boulders and the outcrops throughout the park. On the way home, we were so excited that the dolphins came to play alongside the boat. They were frolicking and there was a really large pod that came along. The caravan was able to lean over the side with her phone and get them on video.